Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 6, and today our guest is a guy named Drew Magary, who's a big-time Vikings fan. He's the author of multiple books. He writes for Defector and SFGate. Really funny guy, really big Vikings fan, and I've known him for a while. We've had a lot of banter. He bugs me from time to time about certain Viking stuff, so really fun to have him on. Before we get into it, I do want to say a couple things. The first is, if you listen to the podcast, episode 5 with Nate Tice, you probably heard a weird me stepping all over him. I like to think that was a lot of connection issue with our production company, as I am a one-man band here. So I think there was a little bit of an internet lag, and I'm hoping that is fixed for this episode. If it's not, then maybe I'm just insane. I mean, I could be absolutely ridiculous and just can't let anybody talk or finish the sentence, or I'll interrupt them 5 seconds before they finish, already knowing what they've said. But no, on a serious note, yeah, some connection stuff, so we're working through that. If this one's botched, then they're gonna have to get creative. We will do that on the Alec Lewis Show, whatever we have to do. There's a preseason game on Saturday. Cannot believe it. The Vikings play the Raiders. Really looking forward to action. And then next week, they'll have joint practices. So this is a really good stretch to figure out what we're going to see from guys like J.J. McCarthy and other young guys, the Dwight McGlothers, Jay Sean Jones at receiver, a lot of Levi Drake Rodriguez, who Drew lovably called LDR multiple times in the podcast. So really good weekend. We'll have kind of a somewhat of a recap after that. I think I'll probably do a mailbag episode for Monday or Tuesday that is coming out of the game. Just take you guys' questions. So look forward to a little tweet from me or our Twitter account at Alec Lewis Show, asking for questions there, and you could just toss them. You could even throw them in the comments here, and I'll get to them. But a little bit of a post-preseason game roster kind of check-up look, so should be good. But no, the conversation was great. It gave me a good perspective of how a fan, at least one, is feeling about this season and the expectations and the young quarterback. So hope you guys enjoy this show. Episode 6, we are rolling, and it's just early August, so a bunch of weeks left until this season rolls on. But as I always say, toss me some suggestions, recommendations on guests. Those will be fun. Like and subscribe, because as I've come to learn, that helps us out both on YouTube and if you're listening on Apple and Spotify. And you can find us at all those places. If you want the video version, you can find that on YouTube. But in the meantime, read what we got at The Athletic. I did a story on the pistol formation. Did something on Mark Wilf's comments about the extensions of Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, extensions or lack thereof. And then we'll have some preview post-game stuff at The Athletic coming out of the preseason game. So appreciate you guys listening as always. Let's jump into the conversation with Drew. Drew, welcome to the Alec Lewis Show. How you doing?
I'm good. I got big hair, and big hair is big fun. I'm ready to go.
How excited are you for a Vikings preseason game?
Strangely more excited than usual, right? Because my sense is, and I don't think this is not exactly like a bold take, but I think the kid will play a lot at quarterback in that game. He'll get a lot of reps. And, he even said himself, he's not going to be facing any defenses like he would face, if it were a regular season game. But I do want to see him out there, with pros who are actively trying to kill him and, and throwing the ball to guys. He's not going to have Justin to throw to. He's not going to have Jordan to throw to because those guys aren't going to play. I want to see how he moves. I want to see how he, if he throws a pick, does he come right back and he's fine? Like all of that. Just sort of basic stuff where I want to know if he is a sort of quarterback where I instantly have confidence in him, or if I just have to spend years and years and years bullshitting myself that maybe he turns a corner.
I'm trying to gauge your level of fandom. So are you like watching back JJ's press conference? Like, I guess.
No. I'll do the thing where like I'll watch like practice reps that have been posted on Twitter. And I'll be like, but I know it doesn't mean shit, but like, I'll still, I'm a fan. So like there's a certain amount of irrational exuberance that I am entitled to. Even if I know that Sam Darnold's going to be the starter week 1, I think that's almost a lock now. And I also know that Sam Darnold sucks. So like I have those things in my brain already. But again, I'm in the post-Kirk afterglow where they could bomb New Zealand and I'd still be perfectly pleased with how they're conducting their business.
I want to get into that a little bit, but explain this to me.
You want to get into bombing New Zealand a little bit? I don't have anything against New Zealand. I mean,
right. I was like, geez, New Zealand's a beautiful place. My dad was
I was
there
born in Australia, but didn't live there long enough to cultivate a rivalry with New Zealand. So just want that known.
No, yeah, we probably won't get into that. But to that point, and you drifting back in your background, what is the genesis of your Vikings fandom? I've read stories you've done when you've come to games and seen said it a little bit, but like I'm part of me wonders where this all began for you.
So we moved to Minnesota when I was 8. Was it 8? It was 8 or 9. And like we were living in Chicago before that, but I wasn't really interested in football. I didn't really I knew about the 85 Bears and I watched that Super Bowl, but it was like in the time where you just watch the Super Bowl but no other football. And I said to my mom, "Oh, what's the football team in Minnesota?" She said, "Oh, they're called the Vikings." I was like, "Oh, that's a cool name." And somehow I started watching their games because they're the only ones that were on local TV, right? And this was like Wade Wilson, Tommy Kramer era, and Jerry Burns, like getting super fucking pissed because Alfred Anderson lost his shoe at the goal line, like all that stuff. And my family left Minnesota in 1991, so I was like 15. By then, I was a pretty regular fan. But then when we left, it was the only thing I could I was the only person in my family who liked living in Minnesota. And I didn't want to leave, but I had to leave because my dad got a new job or whatever. And so I took the Vikings with me, and they were sort of like my one sort of keepsake of Minnesota, which was a mistake because they didn't win dick after that. But that is just sort of what happened.
It's so incredible. So Alec, how do you describe the existence of what it is like to be a Vikings fan?
I mean, it's weird because I don't believe in curses. I hate fatalist Vikings fans now with like a passion. I hate them more almost than Packers fans. That's not true, but it's like they're getting up there. They get under my skin because I have enjoyed being a Vikings fan most of the time, almost entirely because of the players that they have treated me to in my adult life. So I've gotten Chris Carter, I've gotten Randy Moss, I've gotten Adrian Peterson, I've gotten John Randall, I've gotten Harrison Smith, I've gotten Justin, obviously. I got, and then I got like, those periodic, once a decade miracle seasons where they win 13 games and then they biff the NFC title game. So like I have enjoyed being a Vikings fan more than I have disliked being a Vikings fan. And that, if that weren't the case, then I wouldn't be a fan anymore. I'd be like, oh, well, I don't like them anymore. I'm going to go become a Patriots fan or some other dick move like that.
Your lowest low has been what?
So it was literal. It was the Blair Walsh field goal because I was sitting there like it was a gimme field goal. My kids were watching. I think my dog was watching, if we had our dog back then. And then he missed it. And by the way, it wasn't even to win the game. It was just to tie it, right? We were just trying to get overtime going. And I literally collapsed to the ground. I was just in absolute disbelief. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. And then I just sat on the stairs in silence for like 15 minutes or something before sort of picking myself up and going and eating a ho-ho to recover.
And your highest high?
Oh, the miracle. That's easy. That's very, very... Also, I love the 2022 Vikings. I will defend them to the death, even if they choked in the playoffs. I loved that team. They were super fun.
Can you imagine? I mean, that was my first year covering the team. I mean, so part of me is like, can you imagine?
That's a cool year to get them.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've asked you to describe kind of the Vikings fan existence, but I mean, how for you, the Kirk Cousins era, what was it like to be a fan through the course of that from your perspective?
Well, it was weird because I've lived on the outskirts of DC now for over 20 years. And so I was here for all of Kirk's tenure with the Commanders when they had the other name. And I remember that, Kirk was a perfectly good quarterback when he was here, right? And that was true when he was in Minnesota too. And but the Commanders just hated him for some reason and couldn't wait to get rid of him. And I was like, well, they're stupid. And so when it came time for us to court him in 2018, when we were choosing between Teddy and we were choosing between Sam Bradford and then keeping Case Keenum around, and all of those options were fraught. When they signed Kirk, I was like, I knew Kirk's deal. Like, I knew that he was a solid quarterback who was in the hall of only so good, right? And I was like, I was cautiously optimistic. I was like, okay, he can throw the ball, he can throw for yardage, and that's pretty good. And maybe this will work. And then, I don't know, within the first month, he just absolutely shits the bed against Buffalo. And I'm like, okay, well, it's Kirk Cousins. And, I spent the next 6 years trying to, invent a mythical corner in my mind that he would turn. But, by then he was like 30 years old. He was who he was, right? He's never going to be any different. Certainly not in Atlanta, right? With a bum leg and all that. So it was just sort of like, it's like everyone else said. It's just you're running on a treadmill. You're not going anywhere. You know it, and you sort of have to invent ways to, trick yourself into believing that you are actually advancing forward when you're really not.
You had strong feelings around the draft. I remember you had me on the Distraction Pod. It might have been the week before the draft, and it was like we were talking Drake May and 3 first-round picks, and
I was locked in on Drake May.
Yeah. So part of me wonders. It sounded like that was your preferred route. Part of me wonders what you thought of what ultimately ended up happening, and how you kind of sorted through that as the biggest Drake May to the Vikings fan on the east of this country, probably.
Yeah, my plan was for them to trade up for May, and then I was going to buy May's college jersey because North Carolina has bitchin' uniforms, but it didn't happen. And then they drafted. So I thought the options were, trade the farm to go up and get May, or if the Patriots hold firm, you got to trade most of the farm to get up to 4 or 5 to get J.J. McCarthy. That was and that's where I would have been pissed, right? Because, I think there's 2 things. One was just, it's a lot to give up for a guy who is not a consensus top 5 talent. And then, of course, he's just he's a doofy looking white guy, and everyone sort of pre-hated him prior to the draft because he played for a cheating ass Michigan team, and you get that sort of that Ken Dorsey sort of halo effect going on. But then they only had to go up to 10 to draft him, and then they got Dallas Turner on the back end of it. So I was like, that's pretty solid. And then, of course, ever since then, I read every single report. I read about JJ doing meditation and, staying at Winter Park when everyone else has gone away and mastering the playbook and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, the kid can do it. He's a good kid. And now, if I hear one random tweet rumor about Drake May struggling in camp, I'm like, he sucks. We made the right move. I know nothing. I know dick. But, that's where I am right now. I'm sold on the kid. I don't, even if he doesn't start the season, and he won't start the season. But, I have seen enough basically from his time at Michigan, particularly the Alabama game, and his time on the practice field where he is doing things physically that I want a quarterback to do. He's doing the shit that Kirk can't do. And that's kind of all I wanted, right? Even when Josh Dobbs came in a year ago, and Josh Dobbs ended up sucking, right? But he could move, and that was wow, oh my God, It's like when I moved from Manhattan to the DC area, we moved from a studio apartment to a 1-bedroom, and I was like, oh my God, there's so much room. Holy shit, this is incredible, night and day, And And then we moved into a house, and I was like, oh my God, there's many rooms. I can go from, there's a kitchen, like an actual kitchen, like all this stuff. So it had that sort of feel to it where, to have a guy like Kirk who is only so talented, it just, it drags on your psyche after a while. You just want someone who can do some shit back there.
It's so interesting,
particularly when the interior O-line sucks.
It's so interesting because your comment about like the transformation and how you view JJ, and I will say right here, like I've been really, really impressed throughout this entire training camp of how he's looked. Like really impressed. He's at one bad practice, but the psychology behind the transformation when a guy is now on your side is so interesting to me.
Well, the other thing is that I think that there has been, at least with the Vikings, there has been a very positive evolution in the beat guy reporting. I do think this is spread out mostly across the NFL. And I'm talking about local guys. I'm not talking about like ESPN reporters or anything like that, where the people like you and Matthew Collar, you already know to avoid the basic hackneyed storylines of, oh, this guy is healthier than he's ever been. Like all the preseason bullshit that you always get, right? That means absolutely nothing. And so when you guys tell me, okay, it looks like J.J. McCarthy knows what he's doing out there, I trust that more than I would have trusted it, 10, 15 years ago when I have more faith now in what I'm being told by the people who are covering the team because they have a better grasp. And they're not just there to be salesmen on behalf of the Wilf family or anything like that.
It's interesting that you feel that way because I feel, and I'm not to wade in different waters, but it's like, it feels like broadly trust has kind of declined or like vaporized a little bit. So the fact that you feel
like in the media in general,
right?
Yeah.
So the fact you have, you have more trust is, I mean, thank you, but it is interesting to me.
Well. It's because I have good taste in news, right? So, like, I know the difference between, like, you and, like, at Moss Forever 69, like, giving me a report on training camp. Like, I can discern who is going to give me credible information and who isn't. That is not true of many Americans, many Americans, and that's borne out over the past decade and beyond. But, I'm only speaking for myself here. When I say that the coverage has improved, I'm talking about the coverage that I follow. The greater coverage might suck ass, but I know what to ignore.
The hard part too, in my role and Matthew Collar's role, and all of us is, and I battle this every single day. You see great throws, you see terrible throws. Is reporting or putting on Twitter about a report about a great throw, great practice? Like, I try to guard against skewing the narrative one way or another based on any given practice, which is an interesting challenge from my standpoint. You probably, maybe you don't care at all, but that like
no.
I have battled that myself. Of if he's looked great for 9 practices and bad for 1, if I go crazy about the one bad one, then it skews the narrative to where people probably think, well, he might be struggling. So If you say he's great all the time, then people think he's the next coming of whatever. It is a tough kind of balance, I think, in my role, and I've tried to guard against it, but it's not the easiest.
Well, the other thing is that when you see that practice footage, like quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends, and corners, their practice videos are much, much closer to, at least in the viewer's mind, they're closer to they're more resembling of actual gameplay than if you watch the lines or if you watch the running backs. Because, Aaron Jones will take a handoff and then no one will touch him because they can't touch him. So I can't get anything from there. Like, and, I haven't heard like a ton about Dallas Turner, right? Because he's so good that they're not going to bother, having him play in a meaningful reps because they don't want him to get hurt. And he'll probably be a god like right from the start. That's what I think. But there's not going to be anything in practice there's not going to be some practice thing that really clues you in on that. And I know that, right? But when I see a completion in practice that looks like an NFL play, even if it's absolutely not, even if the contexts have most of the underlying context has been stripped away, it still looks like, oh, pretty throw, pretty catch, and we're going to throw for 500 yards every game,
You talked about Sam Darnold earlier, but what is your Vikings fan brain going to feel if he is the starter week 1 and maybe into maybe the half of the season, the first half? Like, how do you think you'll feel about that?
I'll be fine with it because I think that Sam has already figured out, okay, my job is just to chuck it up for Justin and let Justin catch the ball and see how that goes. So essentially, I think at best you're going to get like more respectable Nick Mullins. So you get a guy who can throw for yardage and a guy who will get some touchdowns, but also a guy who turns the ball over all the fucking time. And, even that is really a stretch because Sam Darnold, we're talking about a guy who has never thrown for more than 20 touchdowns in a season and has only thrown for over 3,000 yards once, and that was 5 years ago. So this is not anyone who has a track record. He has no track record of success in the NFL, unless we're counting like a dead cat bounce in Carolina for a little bit, but like that doesn't mean shit.
Well, I mean, I had a conversation with Rich Gannon, who obviously had such an interesting career arc, and the turnovers was where he started. And he told me that when Sam was in Carolina, and I'll have this in reporting in a story at some point, but Matt Rule, I guess, who was the head coach of the Panthers at the time, and that's a whole different story, had Rich Gannon get on the phone with Sam Darnold to talk about like the turnover struggles that Sam had. But I mean, to me, that's really like the difference between what we saw at the end of last year. That's what could elevate this, because you have enough skill players to be good enough. Can you mitigate the one statistic that is most indicative to wins or losses? That's to me, if he can lessen the turnovers, their chance of being in a lot of these games early on will be at a higher clip.
Right, but the if's doing a heavy lifting, right? Because, and also turnovers was, is what defined their season last year, right? So, they opened the season, they fumbled the ball 500 million times, they get the ship righted a little bit, and then, Kirk goes down, and then the ensuing quarterbacks all throw 500 interceptions every game. So, it's a sort of thing that needs to be cured if a team this talented, and it is a very talented team in spots, if they're going to be competitive all the way through the season. And, if you're asking Sam Darnold to be the person who cures that problem, that's not going to happen. Or if it does happen, it will be a wild upset. And even I, a Pollyanna to my core as a Vikings fan, even I'm not going to go that far because I don't have to, because it's only a 1-year deal. Like if he throws like 40 touchdowns, then we're kind of fucked, because then we have to sign the guy. I don't want that. I kind of want him to suck, so the kid gets in there.
It's interesting. The fan perspective is. I mean, part of me wondered for you. Like, let's say that does happen, and he does throw 30 touchdowns this year, 40 and JJ doesn't play the whole year.
Right.
You will be. What will you feel? I mean, I guess it depends on the record, and if they win 10 games that are in the playoffs, then you're gonna have to be so torn inside.
Well, it would be like I would be overjoyed if he threw 30 touchdowns and they made the playoffs. Mostly because there's no way that's going to happen, right? But it would be cool. But then, yes, we would end up with almost the same situation you were in post 2017, where you had a successful season, but you have no idea what to do at the quarterback position. And, that ended up, taking 6 years off of my life and then some. So I think that there's a bar that Darnold's going to have to clear to get them off of the McCarthy project. And that bar is going to be so high. I mean, we're talking like an MVP caliber season. And it's if that happens, I'll be elated because they will have struck gold with someone else's quarterback the way that they do once per decade, right? But I don't envision that happening. But I'm open to it. I go into every season, with an open mind. You're talking to a guy who like after Josh Dobbs' second win, like blue sky, Kwesi got this guy for nothing. And he's the future. Like I bought in all the way, like an idiot. So, I am always prone to that sort of thing. And I like the delusion to a certain extent because it's fun.
Well, I mean, what else offers that type of delusion that is as fun as it is, other than the sports fandom? Like it's why I always people ask me all the time, like, what do you think about people saying this about it? It's like fans should say whatever they want. Like this is one of the most fun aspects, having a young quarterback and saying crazy things. Like that's why you do the fandom. That's why you do this.
Right. And I'm not a process guy. Like I don't want to be, the only time I was okay with them losing was actually week 18 of last year, right? Because by then the season was over. They'd already gotten routed by the Packers. I already wanted to throw up all over my own floor. And I was like, okay, well, they're not going anywhere. And now, like this last game, this game really means jack shit, and it could cost them a decent quarterback. So I didn't even watch that game. I watched it after the fact, but most of the time, if I am sitting there and I see the Vikings win, I am not unhappy that they won, even if they won in the most uninspiring way they possibly could, which has been the case over the past 5 years. Whenever they've won, apart from the Indy comeback and the Buffalo thing.
There was a Chicago game last year. Might have been week 6.
So shitty.
No, there was a Monday night terrible performance, but there was a win, and that might be what you're talking about. Where I remember it was like you got back up to the press box, and it's like, I guess they won, but man, so to be able to feel good about it. I remember sitting there like, I'm supposed to be positive they finally won, and I'm having a very hard time.
Yeah, because they never have any meaningful blowouts. And there's a stat, I should have looked up the stat when I wrote their preview this week, but like, it's something along the lines of, they have not won a meaningful regular season game by more than 2 touchdowns since like 2018 or something completely fucking insane like that. And it's brutal. It's like, I just want to have one victory where like I can exhale in the fourth quarter. Like I don't want them to go up, I don't want them to go up 28-7 and then, take their foot off the gas and then let the other guys sort of go back in. And then they either like do you remember the game where like Dalvin Cook just absolutely ran over the Steelers for a half? Like he ran for like 200 yards in one half or something. I was like, oh, thank God. And it still came down to the final play, and I wanted to fucking die. Like those are annoying, those wins. Like it's
partly
it's
though
not
just
satisfying.
No, but I sat with one of the Viking staffers the other day, and he said, like, literally, Alec, this league is geared. It's literally designed so it comes down to the last. So you battle that, but as a fan, of course, you want to. My dad used to say it all the time with Alabama, like, can we just have an easy win? I'm like, Dad, you've won 6 national championships. Like, yeah, that's it. That's the Bama. That's like the crazy thing about fandom too. Is like
Bama gets to play like Louisiana Tech like 3 times a year. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
man.
You get to a place though where like even when you have the success, you expect the easy, the fun ride. This is fandom. That's very funny.
I remember I was working in New York in I don't know 2000 2001, and some obnoxious lady in the office was like, "It's hard being a Yankees fan," and like this was right when they were in the middle of the dynasty, and I was like I didn't say get the fuck out of here, lady, because it was work or whatever, but like in my brain I was like, I'm gonna need you to leave the room right now because you ain't seen shit when it comes to bad, sports luck.
So you will be watching this Raiders game, like you'll have that on your TV.
Yeah, I'll watch it because preseason, its only value is seeing how rookies do against comparable talents on an NFL field. So I want to see JJ, obviously. I want to see LDR, see if he gets reps in the first half with the first team. I'd like to see some of the UDFAs like Murphy and McGlothern.
You're locked in.
Yeah. Like I like to see those guys. Like the actual, like I'm not rooting for the Vikings to win the game. I don't give a fuck. Nobody gives a shit, right? But you're scouting, you're doing your amateur scouting, and that, the preseason is a good time for that. Like, I remember, like, sometimes it's meaningful. Like, I remember when Adrian Peterson I think it was his first preseason game. It was against the Jets. He busted one for like 70, 80 yards and a touchdown. I was like, okay, that guy's going to be legit. And he was a Hall of Famer. There are moments like that in the preseason, and they're very few and far in between. But also, I got nothing else to do on Saturday afternoon, so I may as well just sit down and pop a gummy and see what happens.
You mentioned Dallas Turner. He is a guy that I mean, if I ranked like Alec Lewis power rankings, people you want to see in this game, I might, like, the quarterback is obviously, it doesn't count, but really, I mean, there's no question on the practice field, the athleticism stands out. I mean, you see him bend and dip in a way that, like, you just, not everybody can do that, but him against an opposing team, specifically a Raiders team that has their offensive line is not to be desired. That's my number one, what I'm looking for beyond the quarterback situation. And that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you're looking for. You're looking at individual players and individual plays. You can't really look at scheme because they're not going to give you any scheme, right? And then you're looking at, like, okay, is special teams, do they have their shit together? Because special team, like a field goal attempt, well, there's nothing really hide with a field goal attempt, right? You're not. There's no surprise field goal attempt that you have to save for week one.
He kicked it with his left foot. Oh,
yeah. They're not going to do any of that. So it's like, okay, I gotta make sure I don't have to worry about Reichert. I have to see if Ryan Wright is first year Ryan Wright when he was really good, or second year Ryan Wright when he was shitty. Like, there's just sort of like, just sort of an observance. I have to, I picture myself being a scout sitting in a section where there's nobody else sitting, and I have like a little notepad and like maybe like a faded hat and shit, and getting all my notes down.
Last one for me. Thank you. This has been a blast. What makes this a successful season in your mind?
If the kid's good, that's it. That's if we end the season, and I know that this guy's going to be with us for 5 or 10 years, and he's going to be a quality NFL starter, that is a successful season, regardless of the record. It's entirely a referendum on the kid.
And what if he doesn't play, and so you don't know the answer to that question?
I told Collar this: if he doesn't play because Darnold played so well, that's fine. But if Darnold sucks shit and the kid still doesn't make the field, that's a concern. Then I'm very, very worried. Right? He doesn't have to be an all-pro his rookie season, but he does have to gain enough confidence of O'Connell and the coaching staff that they're willing to put him into important situations, even if they know he won't, even if they know he's going to struggle, because he's a rookie. They all struggle. Even C.J. Stroud struggled a year ago in certain games. So if they don't have that kind of faith, then I'm worried, because, like, it's like when Lewis Cine never got reps, like, it's like, uh-oh. And now it's like, okay, well, this guy's going to get cut. And the same deal with Andrew Booth, right? If I get that sort of feeling out of the kid, then I will be most displeased.
Will that be the lowest low since?
No. I mean, no. All the lows blur together when you're 47, man. It's like, I'm a dad. It's like, it ain't nothing I ain't seen before. Like, even the 2009 game, the NFC title game, like, even when Favre threw the pick, like, I was sort of like, because by then, like, AP had already done his, like, usual fumble bullshit and all that. So it was like, I was excited about that game, and it remains the closest they've gotten to a Super Bowl. They haven't gotten closer to a Super Bowl ever since. Because 2017, they were blown out of the stadium by halftime. So, I know how to keep things in perspective. I'm the guy who, after a shitty loss, I'm like, well, my family's still alive, and okay. So we go on. So I get pissed for like a day, and then I get over it.
Is there anything you want from a beat writer this year? I don't know. Is there anything you're looking for? Anything I should be? I mean, you're an in tune fan. Anything I should be on or
I just want. I like you guys to focus on the nobodies. So, tell me what you're seeing with LDR. Tell me what you're seeing with Murphy. Tell me what you're seeing, even with like a guy like Nick Muse or Deshaun Jones, like guys like that. Like, let me know, is there, I'm not asking you like, okay, is this guy going to be a surprise superstar? But like, is there more depth on this roster than is presently thought, right? Because it's not a deep roster. Like especially a cornerback, like if another cornerback gets hurt, they're fucked. So like, I need to know about the fringes of the roster more than I need to know about the main guys, because that's self-evident. Like I'm not going to need you to tell me that Aaron Jones looks good because he's Aaron Jones, right? Like that's all obvious. So it's really just the small things like that. And then also whatever the kid's doing, like when I don't know if it was you or something, but like whoever reported that like, oh, he went to Brian Flores to ask for like help. Like I was like, oh, that kid knows what he's doing. He's doing things the right way. Like anything that sort of stokes that fire, I'm down for that. Let's go.
Yeah, my friends say stuff like that. It's like you're just going fishing with stuff like that because yeah.
Give me some hooks to put in the water.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Drew. It was very fun. Thanks for hopping on.
My pleasure. Thanks for giving me another podcast to listen to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's only 450 million.
That's not sarcasm either. Like the only podcasts I listen to are Vikings podcasts. I don't listen to any other podcast. I don't listen to my own podcast.
You can't listen to your own voice. If I've learned anything, I can't. Like my mom's like, have you listened back? No. Like I've got stories to do. I've got reporting to. But I mean, I don't have time to listen to how bad I sound.
You know what? I think that has changed. I think that dynamic has changed a little bit since I was a child, because when I was a child, obviously there was no internet, and so you would not hear your own voice recorded very often. You'd hear it on like home videos. If you had a camcorder, you'd hear it like,
what's that? I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. Like or if you had a tape recorder and you taped it or something like that. But it would be very rare to hear your own voice outside of the voice in your head. That is not as true now when you're growing up and your parents take 500 videos of you every day, and if you're like me, you have a podcast, so you hear your own voice through the microphone a lot. So I have adjusted to hearing my own voice. It doesn't freak me out. When I was a kid and I heard it, I was like, oh, I'm going to die alone because my voice is so annoying. But it gets a little better with more sort of exposure.
It's good to know. Well, that was fun. Thank you for hopping on. Enjoy a preseason game.
I will. It's not going to end 3-0 either, so I'm very excited.
Let's hope that game. No, let's hope. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it.
All right, see you, brother.
And that will do it for our conversation with Drew. Funny as always. I probably giggled and laughed as much as I do with Paul Allen weekly on KFAN. But no, on a serious note, it is it was very fun to talk to him. It's a perspective that I always enjoy, and then to hear the source of his fandom and how he thinks about that is interesting, and hopefully some of you guys can relate to that. So a little bit of a different deal, even though he had his takes. Rather than bringing on a guest who has opinions about the direction this year, and I guess Drew does as well, and has insight on evaluating this season. It was more of it was a fun episode, something that I thought would be a little different. So let me know if you guys liked it in the comments on YouTube, and like and subscribe on Apple or Spotify if that's how you guys are listening. In the meantime, like I said at the top, check the stories that I'm doing for my day job at The Athletic, and a lot more coming. So stay locked and loaded. Any recs, any advice, anything, I'm open. It won't affect me too much, and hopefully the connection was better this time around. So appreciate you guys listening. That is episode 6 of The Alec Lewis Show.